Hey guys, we are going to use again our old reliable couple, John and Jane, but this time we're going to apply internal family systems approach in conceptualizing the case of this couple. David Schwartz, who developed internal family systems, believes that we have parts and we're born with them. These parts are like subpersonalities, and our mind has a natural, they're naturally subdivided, and we are naturally multiple. Our mind is naturally multiple, that we're all actually multiple personalities, which is a good thing. So we are no different from those people who carry the diagnosis, except that theirs are blown apart more because of horrific trauma that they have experienced. Now, our inner parts have natural, valuable qualities and resources that they can lend to us. But what happens is that when we go through life and we go through life difficulties, some of us go through attachment injury, some of us go through trauma. What happens is that these parts, their qualities shift from their valuable qualities to roles that can sometimes be extreme and sometimes be destructive to us. These roles might have been needed when you were in the middle of a trauma, or when you were dealing with toxic parents. And what these parts do is that because your experience is so painful, excuse me, they get them out of they get these painful memories out of your awareness, this painful experience out of your awareness. But what happens is that not only are you trying to leave those memories, your sensation, your emotions and beliefs in the past, but what happens is you also lock away those parts of you that carry that carry these burdens. And these burdens and all these feelings that you can't stand. And a lot of these parts were also your most sensitive parts, your most some of them, your most sensitive parts, the one that got hurt, the scared part of you, the shame part of you, and they were also these lovely inner children, the inner child of you, who could give you all these kinds of creativity and playfulness and desire. So not only you lose access to their gifts, but you lose the parts themselves. It's like insult to injury. The injury is the trauma, the pain, the hurt, and the insult is being abandoned by you. So these parts are really desperate and suffering. And so as you go through life, and when something similar happens in any way, shape, or form, these parts explode into flames of emotions that control you and consume you. So when that happens, you would need a bunch of protector parts, which actually are parts that spend all their lives trying to prevent this from happening. Some of them try to manage your lives, and some of these are called what they call the managers, and some of them are just impulsive and reactive, which they call the firefighters. These firefighters try to they're very impulsive, and they would do any necessary steps to douse these flames of emotions, these painful memories and beliefs. So these parts are really good parts that were forced into extreme and sometimes damaging roles. In addition to all these parts is the undamaged essence in all human beings that is called the self, which embodies characteristics like confidence, calm, curiosity, clarity, connectedness, courage. These characteristics lead an individual to a life that is harmonious and balanced, which can only be achieved when leadership is attained by the self. And so our goal is not to get rid of the parts, but for the parts to recognize the existence of the self and recognize the love of the self that is there. When that happens, the self emerges, and suddenly a new person comes out and just suddenly knows how to heal these parts. So we want to look at these parts of John and Jane to understand what their parts are going through. The manager part of John is this part that keeps him going, that keeps him on the go to work, that tells him to keep things together, to succeed is the one that makes him a successful professional. This is the one that tells him to be tough, to be a good husband, to be responsible. This is the one that manages his life. His exalt part is this part that these intrusive parts of him that makes him feel he's inadequate and worthless despite his successes. This is also the part that made him cry in the garage when he was vulnerable. For his firefighter part, this is the part that fights with Jane, that that is impulsive, that is reactive when we're not connecting with each other. For Jane, the manager part of her is the part that tells her to not mope around, to move on. This is the one that tells her to move on, to quit your job, be a good mother. Be a good wife to John, support your husband, be this person that is good, that is nice, and really being supportive. The exile part of her is this part that is making her feel that she's not good enough, that she's these helplessness that she feels for not having a child, not being able to have a child and bring a child into this world. This is the part that tells her she's not going to be a good wife, a good enough wife, and because of the expectations that is brought upon her by probably her culture, by the family. And her firefighter part would be that the part of her that fights with John, that impulsive part of her, whenever they're disconnected from each other. Diversity factors to consider would be John's Asian identity as it relates to Jane's Caucasian identity. John being an Asian male, his self-control, being able to maintain dignity, sustain modest and appropriate behavior, calmness and poise in the face of pain and suffering or highly emotional states are highly valued among Asian males. Modesty can be evidenced here by his depreciating of his own accomplishments. Directly focusing on his emotions may be difficult and provides shame for him, so he cries alone in the garage and does not show to his wife. Likewise, their upbringing and culture may also have influenced their manager parts, their exile and firefighter parts. For instance, John's manager parts takes place when he's feeling vulnerable and not dwelling on negative thoughts or avoiding negative emotions because that is what is expected of an Asian male. Their socialization also could be considered a diversity factor. John, as a male, values work, providing for the family, and the expectation of him to impregnate his wife is something that is probably causing shame for himself. Whereas Jane's socialization is different. Her primary concern would be that of being a mother and a wife, and putting her career on the side for to support the family, to support her husband. An example of intervention would be assessing John and Jane's parts. So we want to know what their parts are saying. By putting them in a quasi-meditative state, which means that John and Jane are no longer in their present moment's physical space, but rather perhaps in their mind, talking to their parts. We want to ask John and Jane how their experiences are with their parts when for instance, when the manager is in control, or when the firefighter is desperately fighting to suppress pain, or trying to suppress pain. And for the exile, for instance, when it's trying to emerge, what is it saying? What thoughts or feelings or sensations or images are there when these parts are at play? So what you want to know is what we want to happen is to help John and Jane develop a relationship with their parts, so that they would be able. These parts are given opportunity to express themselves. An initial phase goal would be to unburden the parts, or freeing the parts from their extreme roles, relinquishing their roles. So each part can add their own input. So, for instance, for the managers could provide guidance on how to prevent the problems. For the firefighters, probably you could ask the firefighter part to use healthier coping strategies to deal with distress and to trust the self. For the exiles, probably you could ask the exile to recognize the influence of the past and the reality of the present. And for the self, the wisdom, the seed of wisdom, would integrate these advice from all three parts, and make a decision. Should we avoid it? Should we tolerate it? Is where is this coming from? Is this truly a threat right now? A working phase goal would be restoring the trust in the self. So as these parts start to relinquish their roles, and thereby giving space for the self to emerge, what happens is that the self starts to to lead. And what happens to the parts is that they go back to their original valuable qualities, valuable states, and they become more themselves. So you want to ask these parts, the protective parts, to, for instance, ask them to help help restore the self, how to help restore the self. So you may want to ask the part and the manager part, for instance, how is your manager going to help you as we start to do this difficult work? For the firefighters, you can probably validate the firefighter and say you've done benevolent work. What strategies can we use? How do you know when you need to be activated instead of automatically being activated? How can the self let you know when you need to get involved? And then, of course, finally, you also want to identify the exile and start helping them tell their story and help them become empowered and integrated. So as the final phase goal, we want to coordinate and harmonize the self and parts of John and Jane, so that they can work together as a couple, with the self in charge, with themselves in charge, as they become more self-aware, and as they become more familiar with the parts and able to deal with their internal systems. John and Jane are able to be more compassionate with each other, as they become primary caretakers of themselves. They become secondary caretakers of each other, and by being vulnerable with each other, seeing each other's parts, and accepting each other in a non-judgmental way, they're able to be more compassionate with each other and form a deeper connection with each other. Thank you.